Most people want to feel like they're contributing to something that has purpose.
Yes.
And so when you listen, you get to hear, how do they think they make that happen? And even if they're, wrong in quotes, or it's not as ideal as what you think, you've created the space to influence them.
Yes.
And you cannot have influence if there is no listening. And the job of a project manager, a senior executive, a CEO, an entrepreneur is about influence. And you can't have that if you don't listen.
Dude, well said. See, I told everybody changing life stuff, right? Like,
I hope so.
So the real question is this: how do hardworking project hustlers like us, who aren't afraid to put in the work, who invest in ourselves and our careers, how do we prepare for the PMP in a way that makes us battle ready for the onslaught of situational questions we know we'll face, so that we can walk into the exam with confidence and walk out with the project respect we deserve? Now, I've been in your shoes and I've done it. Join me as I guide you step by step to your PMP success using the most innovative study practices and the best tools on the market. My name is Scott Payne, and welcome to PMP Exam Success Secrets.
all right, guys. So today we have a really, really special interview. This is going to help us out a lot. Now, we have James P. Friel here. He's going to teach us a ton. Hey, James, here you go. If you're listening, you got to go check out the audio or the video. Here you go. So James is going to help you guys kind of transform your career, because he is a guy that kind of takes hustling entrepreneurs and makes them like star CEOs and does a lot of things. So I want to get out of James' way, let him tell you what he does, and you guys are going to learn a ton. So James, tell us what you're all about, man.
Man, no pressure. I'm going to help people transform their lives. I better live up to that expectation.
I haven't even started selling you yet, so don't worry about it yet.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, the thing that I've found is, entrepreneurs start businesses, and there's something they're really good at. They're good at, a particular service. They have a product that's really cool, something like that.
Right.
And as soon as the business starts to grow, they become laden down with all these other things that they've got to do. Now I've got contractors, or I've got employees, or I got bills to pay, or I got, customers to service, and all these different things. And you wind up spreading yourself so thin that you're like, wait a second, I thought this is going to give me some freedom here.
Yeah.
And it turns out these are like golden handcuffs of some kind.
Right.
And so one of the things that I've discovered is there's two journeys that everybody needs to make in order to go from hustling entrepreneur to effective CEO. And one of those journeys is on the inside, sort of like an internal journey of becoming the person who's capable of being that effective CEO. How do I think? How do I develop my leadership ability? How do I make sure that, my mindset is right? I'm productive, like all these different things, right? And we could probably spend days talking about the internal journey. But then there's also the external journey, which is, how do I make sure that I am building systems and infrastructure and things that really replace me in the day-to-day and in the weeds, so that I can be as effective as possible, continuing to chart the course and continuing to look forward towards the future and casting a big vision. And so those are a lot of the challenges that people we work with encounter. And I know that some of the people listening to this as well may not consider themselves entrepreneurs as such. And I think that's okay. And I hope you still listen to this, because there's a lot to be said for bringing this same mindset
Right.
towards what you do, whether you're, a valuable employee in an organization, you're working in a nonprofit. Like it doesn't matter. There's some like tried and true principles that we're going to get into here that I think will be really valuable, whether you are that hustling entrepreneur trying to become an effective CEO, or you're just, somebody who's working inside of an organization, big or small, and you want to do an amazing job and you want your career to continue to accelerate.
Right. And just for frame of reference, so I am a hustling entrepreneur, so I play that role, but I think we both were in companies to start, right? So you're not just coming from the outside, you're speaking from a person that's been in the grind of the company and outside. Talk to a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent the first 10 years of my career inside big corporations. two major corporations to be specific. And, these were multi-billion-dollar companies. And I kind of flirted with the idea of leaving for a long time. And I was just like, man, it's kind of scary. Like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to get paid? Right? How am I going to do all these things? And, we can kind of go into that story if you want to, but 8.5 years ago, I left and, partnered up with, some other firms, and then wound up starting my own companies. And now I've started multiple companies. I currently run 3 companies simultaneously. I have a growing portfolio of businesses. And so some of these principles were things that I started doing while I was still in the corporate world, managing teams before I even had my own business.
Right on. So like anybody that's out there, I think a lot of so we want to try to like make sure that they can get connections between this. Like you're running multiple companies. A lot of these project managers out there are hoping to get to the point where they're running programs and organizations and departments, and they're running big PMOs. Like, so they're going to be in the similar spot. While they might not, have to sign the checks at the end of the day for, an entrepreneurial side, they're going to have wide responsibilities. So what are some of these like basic principles that they need to be aware of? Like, how would we start like kind of educating in this realm?
Well, I think the first thing is, no matter what kind of project team you're putting together, you've got to be good at talent development and making sure you have people in the right spot.
Right.
This stuff even goes back to like projects I worked on in teams and groups in college, right? Like if you had the one person who sucked at math responsible for all the math behind a project, like you guys are all going to fail.
Yeah.
Right. And the same is true, inside of an organization. You've got to make sure that you've got the right team. Like team is so important because there's no one person who's great at everything. There are people who are really good at specific things. And I think the cool part about being a project manager or, a director or a CEO or, anything like that is that it puts you in a position to move people into the places where they're really good and where they can really shine and create a great outcome for that project. Right. It reminds me of a story that I heard from called Extreme Ownership. And in the book, they're talking about Hell Week. Navy SEALs go through Hell Week in order to get their become a SEAL. And they were, I think they had him broken out. I'm going to screw up the story details.
Whatever.
The story
Jocko's not coming to get us. We're good.
Yeah. I don't know. He's a Navy SEAL. He could be like popping out of my closet right now. I don't even know. So yeah, that would make for great.
I mean, God, I hope if Jocko's there, pop out, bro. Come on. So
yeah. I think there were like 6 teams, and they had this big obstacle course that they had to do. And if you lost, the penalty was you had to do the obstacle course again. And so these guys aren't sleeping. They're like freezing cold in the ocean. There's all these, they're just like deprived, exhausted, fatigued, everything, you name it. Right.
Yep.
And this one team consistently kept losing this obstacle course.
Okay.
And finally the drill sergeants or whatever you call them over there, they went up to the guy and they're like, why do you guys keep losing? This guy points the fingers at his team. He's like, it's my team. My team sucks. If I had a better team, we'd be winning, blah, blah, blah. The guys in charge said, you know what? Like they knew better. They went to the team that was consistently winning, and they asked that team leader to switch teams with the losing team leader.
Oh.
So they switched teams, right? So now the losing leader has the winning team, and the winning team or the winning leader has the losing team. So they go through the whole thing again. The winning leader with the losing team wins the next time around.
There we go. That's right? Good, man.
Leadership is so incredibly important. And I think that, you do need to assemble the right team, but you also need to show up as the right leader. Because if you're showing up as the right leader, somebody who casts the right vision, somebody who helps people, stay in their lane and play best to their strengths, who can keep that whole team in integrity and together, like you dramatically increase your odds of winning every single time. And that's true across the board. Whether again, you're project manager inside of an organization, entrepreneur running your own thing, or, anywhere in between.
I think that's awesome. And it's so great to talk to that, because I think sometimes, my podcast is called PMP Exam Success Secrets. So we're talking about like, we get in the ground details of like the mechanisms of running projects and stuff. But I think this is why it's so great to have you on, is to talk about, yeah, those are important, but those are like things that get us there. But the big thing, like everybody's got the same tools and all this other stuff. They got the same, Trello boards, et cetera, but it's those leaders that you talk about that bring things together. So I think that's great. And I'm a Jets fan, and so we've been bad forever and will never not be bad.
Yeah.
And it starts at the top, whereas, a better team would just take over the Jets and it would be good, a couple of years.
Well, it's possible. It's funny you bring that up because I'm a Mets fan.
Okay. I'm a Mets fan too. So,
all right. Well, you got double bad luck.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Mets, like 1986, they won the World Series. I was a little kid. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to be a Mets fan forever. My dad was a Yankees fan. He's like, don't do it. I promise you it's not a good idea. And I was like, no, I'm a Mets fan. So I've been a Mets fan for years now. And just looking at last year, not to get too into sports here.
Yeah.
But 2019, on an individual player level,
yeah,
the Mets had some of the best players in the entire major league.
Yeah.
And yet they had a barely over 500 record for the entire season. And then you look at the Nationals, who won the 2019 World Series.
Right.
They had some good players, but arguably they didn't have they didn't have Cy Young winning pitchers that year, like this or that, and their players were good, but it was the team and it was the leadership and everything that caused the team to be scrappy and gritty and win. And so, I think that it's easy sometimes to point fingers at like, oh, I don't have the right people on my team. But the truth is, like, unless you're an engaged leader and doing everything that you possibly can be doing, you're probably leaving a lot on the table yourself with your own leadership capability or lack thereof.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. So like a lot of things that I've learned from you is like, it always seems to start with like assessing where we are right now and kind of building off of that. Like if there's people out there that kind of say, wow, James, I got to look at myself and see what kind of leader I am. What are some simple ways maybe that they can look at themselves and say, how effective a leader, other than just the results of their performance, but even if they're performing well, they might be just lucky in a situation. What are some different ways that they can look at themselves and figure out if they're a great leader or not?
Well, I think one of the simplest but hardest to do ways is, do you practice what you preach? Right. Do you show up and actually expect the same or more from yourself than you do from other people? Because there's a lot of people out there who have a leader title, but really don't show up in like the full capacity of being that leader, right? They're like, they expect more from other people than they expect from themselves. They expect other people to do things that they wouldn't do, like all these different things. And you go throughout history and you look at the absolute best leaders in any domain, military, sports, business, like whatever. The best leaders are the ones who embody the principles that they expect others to embody. And that sets the tone. Like you have to set the tone culturally. And one of the best ways to do that is, am I the person that I really need to be here? Right? Am I stepping up? And there is no perfection here. Like you never get to like, oh, now I'm a great leader.
Right.
You just continue to chip away at it. You're like, this is my craft.
Right.
Like, how can I continue to be a better leader? How can I master that?
Yes.
Like you master leadership. There's not a lot that you can't accomplish in this lifetime.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And I like that idea of just being, you said your craft, your art, like the thing that you're like, it's in your soul. So I'm 100% on board. I like where you got it. How did you, like when you made the jump out, are you a different leader when you ran organizations inside the corporate world than you are now? Like, how are you a different leader now?
I would say I am. I don't think it's like a light switch type of thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's more on a continuum.
Okay.
Right. And for me, I had a team of about 65 to 70 people when in my last corporate role before I left. Right. Globally distributed, like the whole thing. And I'd almost 10 to 12 years less experience than I do now as well.
Right.
And so I think that accounts for something. But the biggest thing for me in leaving, and I think the way in which my leadership changed, was I got to be honest, I'm probably more committed to the outcome now.
Right.
You know, and it's not like I wasn't committed to the outcome there, because I'm a pretty competitive type of person.
Right.
And I like achieving results and, that sort of thing. But it just feels more visceral. It feels like there's more on the line
right
now. And I think that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on whether you kind of lean into it or you shrink back from it.
Yeah.
But for me, it became an exciting motivator. I was like, wow, if I don't step up as a type of leader that I know I need to be, all these people that I'm paying that are on my team, like, we're going to fail. Forget about me and my future. Like, cause I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to create something. But what happens to all these other people?
Yeah.
I don't want to let them down. Like inside of a big organization, your project doesn't work out. I mean, unless it's a super critical project, probably not everybody on your team is going to get fired. Right.
Great.
But you're running your own business and you don't make it work, you're going to be out of business and your entire team is going to be out of a job. And that's not cool. And so I think just the level of commitment to the outcome, like that increase and that kind of ratcheted up. And for me, that makes me feel more alive.
Yeah.
For other people, it might freak them out and make them feel scared. And that's okay too.
Right. Yeah, that's not so bad. But I mean, maybe they could take the kind of same attitude to be like, if this was an entrepreneurial kind of endeavor, like if every project in a sense is a startup where you're like, I got to make this thing work. I got to figure it out. I can't take it, any excuses. I can't rely on the political environment to, be my scapegoat. Maybe they would.
I think that, yeah, you know what? And I think that's an excellent point. And one of the attributes I feel like I chose, because I feel like we could choose our attitude. Right. And even in my early days of my, corporate career, even 2-3 months out of college, and I just had this role, I just decided to own it.
Yeah.
I was like, I own this role. And like, if I'm doing it wrong, somebody eventually is going to tell me otherwise, but I'm not going to wait. I feel like there's a lot of, table by not working with a sense of purpose and a sense of urgency. And we, especially in a big organization where, there's politics and there's red tape and there's all these different things. We're like, maybe, I don't want to push too hard, or I don't want to do this because then this person's going to get upset or think I'm, kind of crowding in on their turf. And I don't know. I think there's short-term drawbacks that can happen sometimes from really just like plowing ahead. But over the long term, your results are always going to be better if you're just like, you know what, I'm going to do what I think we should do. Right. And if somebody's got a problem with it, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that like, as we think through, I think the natural drawback for people to say is, I have a long-term career. I don't want to throw it away. I'm not going to take those gambles that James just talked about. And like, I did not have that perspective in life. I had the perspective that I was going to push forward and do whatever. And it was a lot of like, maybe it was wrapped in like some like insecurity a little bit to say like, oh, I'm a super smart guy. I'll figure it out. But I think that I didn't, like, maybe this comes with age or experience, but what I learned is you can be that forceful person, but you have to develop a deeper skill to be able to navigate that, weird organization. Cause I don't know how many organizations I went through where I was like, I'm pushing, if they just accepted my ideas, everything would be better. And I just leave. And then I just leave. And then I just leave. But when I realized that, you know what, there's one constant, me, that keeps leaving. And I'm always going to have to deal in this organization and swim in this stream. Why don't I just get better at swimming in the stream and get my stuff done? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot to be said for that, because I think if no matter what you're doing, whether you're inside an organization, or you're running your own organization or anything, you have to develop relational capital.
There you go.
Right? Like, you have to do that. You have to have people on your side. You have to have people bought into what you're doing, the way that you're trying to do it. Excuse me. And if you are trying to be slightly aggressive, it's even more important to make sure you have that relational capital in place, And I think it's sometimes it's tempting to be a purist and be like, oh, like, well, this is the way to do it. And, you know, people that have a project management background, like I was a project manager for a while. Right. And I think a lot of people listening to this are as well. Like, you've got sort of a very structured way that you think things need to be done.
Right.
And chances are good, it probably is a better way than other people would do it anyway. But sometimes willing to shave off some of those hard edges a little bit in favor of compromise towards better relational capital allows your way of doing things, even if it's only as 80% as good as you wanted, to move faster and actually cut through the red tape.
Yeah.
And so it's a super important skill set to develop to get people to buy into your ideas, your approaches, all of that. But the most important skill set like you'll ever develop in your entire life is listening.
Ah, dude, you took it from me.
Sorry, man.
It's cool. That's the most beautiful thing. I'm so happy that you said that. Like, tell me more about, because I was like, once I started listening to people, and I guess I was listening to you, that's when I realized that, like, oh, I have an opinion, but like, tell me why listening is so important, please.
Listening is important because if you truly understand and respect the perspective of somebody else, like, you'll be able to internalize that and come back with a measured response. If you are only committed to sharing your point of view is not going to land, because first of all, people need to be listened to. But in listening, you give yourself the advantage. Yeah. Like, you give yourself the advantage because somebody's like, I like that guy. Like, every time I talk to Scott, he listens to me. They're going to be more inclined to tell you what they really think. And how much easier is it going to be for you to navigate whatever circumstance if you actually know what somebody really thinks, as opposed to plowing ahead with your idea, not knowing what they think. And you're like, well, I'm just moving forward. And it's like, man, you could have changed things like 2 degrees and made so much more progress if you had just stopped to listen and really thoughtfully consider somebody else's perspective. Because I have this fundamental belief that most people want to do a good job. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there are very few people who are just like, I'm here to stir the pot and make a total mess. Granted, those people are out there. I've run into them. You've run into them. Everybody's run into them. But by and large, most people want to do a good job. Most people want to accomplish the objective. Most people want to feel like they're contributing to something that has purpose.
Yes.
And so when you listen, you get to hear, how do they think they make that happen? And even if they're, wrong, in quotes, or it's not as ideal as what you think, you've created the space to influence them.
Yes.
And you cannot have influence if there is no listening. And the job of a project manager, a senior executive, a CEO, an entrepreneur is about influence. And you can't have that if you don't listen.
Dude, well said. See, I told everybody changing life stuff, right? Like,
I hope so.
Yeah. No, but like, that listening thing is so important, because you have the right I love the thing you talk about, the perspective, like, that everyone's here to do a good job. Everyone's living with, like, they're trying to just contribute to the thing. Like, I got one of the consulting jobs at like one of these big giant corporations that people talk bad about. It's a food company. I won't say it. And then I was like, they were like, oh, it's terrible. They're doing all this bad stuff. And then I walked in and I realized it's just people. There's just people in here, and they go to lunch and stuff. Like,
yeah, they put their pants on the same way I do. They like have kids. Their kids go to Little League. It's like, we forget that on some level, like, we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Right. And we act like we're not. And, that's where the biggest problems, not to get like too philosophical about this, but that's where the biggest problems in the world come from, when we forget, like, hey, we're all residents of this giant spaceship called Earth. Yeah. And, if you walk into an organization, you see everyone as an adversary or hostile, where, we've got our project team and it's us versus them.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. It's not helpful. It's, how do we make it more us? How do we make this more inclusive? And how do I step up and be the person who's facilitating that?
Yeah.
And like that's where real leadership opportunities open up.
I think it's great because a lot of times, I mean, I find myself a lot of times just selling my ideas, pushing, and I'm like, dude, like, gotta slow down on that. And if the idea is great, even if they chip away at it, it's gonna be there. Like, and it's not. I think, I mean, like, you might be, if you're an effective leader, you might be able to let them chip away at it and see because there probably are weaknesses in any idea. Like, the Constitution probably has a couple holes. I don't know.
Well, there was a whole Bill of Rights in here right after.
There you go.
So had a few holes.
So if they would have just said, no, perfect piece of paper, got it done, got a good signatures on it, they wouldn't have got to the better stuff. So I like that angle that you take about listening. It's super important.
Yeah, it's one of the most important things. I would argue, like I said, the most important thing.
I'm on board. I signed that. You're John Hancock.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so sweet. So if people out there, they're appreciating like leadership, they're kind of like reflecting. They'll take a little time after this to kind of reflect if they are really all in, if they're like allowing themselves, to have the time to listen to people and really build their team. Now, you do a lot on systems. And so I know a lot of people out there might be from a systems type background, but some aren't. They just found an accidental project management. How do you start to teach people about the importance of systems or get them into systemizing things? What's your approach, or what's the way to think about it?
Well, I think there's a couple pieces to that conversation to unpack.
Yep.
And the first one is like, why bother with systems in the first place? Right? Systems take work, they take thinking, right? They take coordination. There's effort involved in creating systems. So it's like, why the hell do we even want to bother with this? Like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. And I believe that systems at their best help us get things done faster, more consistently, and in a more predictable way than we can do without them. Right. So one of the biggest benefits is, can I get this thing done repeatedly, in a repeatable way?
Yeah.
Can I get this thing done in a more efficient way? Can I get this thing done so that I don't have to focus as much time on doing it, and I can focus my time and energy and effort elsewhere? And so I think this is definitely something we go into a detail, with our clients who are, in some stage of effective CEO. Like, first we've got to recognize, like, why do I want to do a system? Why do I want to think about this? Because it's, can I just get out there and sell stuff? Can I get out there and just like run my project or anything else? And like, you can, but if you want to exponentially increase your output, right, if you want to get leverage on your time, if you want to get leverage on your people's time, like, you need systems. And so that is just like the foundation, right, of this whole thing, right? Like, why? Yep. Well, and don't take my word for it, right? Go look at any successful enterprise anywhere, ever. Okay. And there were some level of systems involved in making it so.
Right.
Right. Forget about, like religious beliefs or anything.
Sure.
But religions have been around for a long time. Every religion has a system of some kind, right? Like, here's what we believe. Here's when we get together. Here's when we do this. Here's when we do this. Here's how we do this. Here's who's in charge. Here's who reports to who. It's like, it's all structured, right? And so like these structures help us as human beings who are, who crave a social order to be able to work effectively together. And applied to business, it increases profits, like less effort in, more output out, right? And so that's the goal of the system. But understanding a system is, I think, a little bit of, I don't know, I think it's misunderstood. So people are like, oh, a system, well, that means I just need to get like this cool software tool. Like, I'm going to use Microsoft Project as our system. Okay. Or, Trello is our system, or Asana or Monday or Slack, or like whatever. Here's our system. And I think that that's shortchanging a system, because a system at its purest, most fundamental definition is a combination of people and processes and tools, right? Microsoft Project is one component of that system, right? The people on our team, they're another component of the system. the processes that we use. That's the third component. And you can rest assured that if you have a system that's not functioning effectively, you have a breakdown in one of those three areas.
Right on.
Either we don't have people, we have the wrong people, or we have the right people with the wrong job descriptions, where they're not clear on what they need to do. We either have process, we have tribal knowledge of process, meaning it's not documented properly and everybody just sort of remembers it in their head.
Yeah.
Or it's documented and everybody agrees that that's the way we do things, right? We either have tools, we don't have tools. The tools are easy, they're intuitive, help us actually accomplish a thing. And so I think when we're systemizing anything, it comes down to people, process, and tools. So I'll give you a crazy example, because you're like, all right, well, does this really work for anything? And I would argue that it does. And I would challenge a debate.
Let's do it.
If anyone just be like, James, I found a situation where this doesn't hold true. I'd love to hear it. Okay. So we have two kids,
okay,
10 and 12. Okay. And one of the agreements that we have is, in order for them to get technology time, they need to read, they need to do something creative, or they need to play a musical instrument or something, right? So they need to do something to improve themselves, and then they earn their video games and all this other stuff, right?
Sure.
So that's our objective. We have a simple system for making sure that this is followed. We created a form that they can access from their iPhones. They click on the form, they fill it in. It says, okay, what did I do today? Did I read? Did I play the guitar? Did I do this, or this? When did I start? When did I stop? That's people/process/tool.
Yep.
Right? Then the output of that gets automatically sent to a spreadsheet, which crunches numbers.
There you go.
Then every Sunday, we all get a report that says, here's how much creative time you did. Here's how much technology time you get. And we're all on the same page.
There you go. What's
awesome.
This new app called? What's this new app?
This is a homegrown thing here to
I know, but
bring up responsible adults. But the point is, people, process, tools, right? They are the people. I'm one of the people in that system, and they're the other two people. Process every day, fill out your form, which is where the process and the tool/technology comes into play. And then once a week, another process. On Sunday, we sit down, we review the numbers, and then we figure out what technology you've earned for the next week.
Wow. That's really cool. All right. So I'm trying to think of a way to break the system, but I really like that, because I think as the people who are running projects and thinking through here and listening, to think through their solutions potentially as how do they provide solutions that deliver all three of them, like supporting the people, the process, and the tools, not just delivering a building or whatever. Thinking, I think you could probably, maybe you agree, you don't, if you'd have a better outcome from a project if you integrated all three of those things into the thing that you're delivering. Does that
100%? Because then you'd have a holistic system.
There you go.
Right. So think about, Oracle software, right? So they build software, but a huge revenue driver in their business is consulting services.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're like, okay, so the software is one deliverable, but the people and process from our consulting services that help you leverage the tools more effectively, that creates the whole system.
Jesus. Yeah.
Right. So it's so you can go real micro with this, or you can go real macro with this. But the whole thing comes down to systems create solutions.
Yep.
And you rarely will have a solution without some combination of people, process, and tools. Like you go to a fast food restaurant, people, process, tools, right? People on the drive-through, process about how they do their job, tools, that goofy little headset that they have to wear, right? All of it, people, process, tools everywhere, because that is what creates a solution. Everything else creates a partial solution where you keep getting sucked into the weeds.
There you go. I like that. And so if someone takes away right now to think through, what are they delivering right now? Are they creating that holistic system-based solution? as we're trying to move up in our careers, if you're in the corporate grind or wherever, or even if it doesn't matter. Like, you're right, it doesn't matter. Like, everywhere. Like, am I creating a better solution that's holistically all around? So if we can do that, I think everybody's going to,
everybody's going to benefit. And here's the thing also that's really interesting. So if you look at a company, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a product or a service. The service tends to be, more people process focused. Products tend to be more tools focused, right? And so if you're running a company, and you're building a software tool, you could create several other streams of revenue by focusing on people and process, right? If you're a company that's out there and you're doing staffing of some kind, you could create additional streams of revenue by supporting that staffing with better process and tools.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, there's a lot of opportunity out there for new revenue creation.
Yeah.
Simply by acknowledging that most businesses will only provide one, maybe two of the three missing ingredients for a system/solution. And you could just say, oh, hey, if we bolt this on and offer this new thing to these existing customers with this existing offer, you could probably create another line of business right out of that.
Yeah, you're changing games right off the bat. Because I imagine these companies, like if you're in a niche and it's highly competitive, everybody's just looking right at each other like horses in a race, and you're just pushing right along. Where if somebody takes a step back, and you're just opening up a whole new field.
Yeah.
So
yeah, completely. And then if you open that up, you're edging everybody out in your space, but you're expanding your sort of kingdom, so to speak.
Right.
Because now you have more offers, and it doesn't matter which avenue people come in, because you have a suite of things that you can offer to them.
Right. Wow. And I think, like, as people are pitching projects inside their companies, they could start thinking through that as like, what solutions will complement what I'm doing here that possibly gets their projects better approved, actually delivers better results, all those things. So I think that's really good. Like, if people were going to take, we've talked about a lot today. If people were going to take one thing to kind of take back to their office on Monday and really kind of just try to amp their game up a little bit as far as like being a leader and running a project, what is like one or two things that you would have them do day one?
Day one, I think it would be, especially inside of an organization, I think sometimes you inherit a vision from somebody else, right? They're like, hey, here's the vision, what we want to achieve. Now you go make it happen. But I think in order for you to like really step up into the leadership role that's required, and then to help you accelerate your career and your progression and your craft, you've got to create your own vision for that project.
Nice. Right?
You got to be like, here's where we're going. Like, own that project. Don't just see yourself as an executor of somebody else's project. Because that's like, it's not nearly as motivating. It's going to cause you to think differently about it. And if you really step up like, hey, I might be project manager here, I might be program manager or whatever, but this is my project. Like, you're going to show up in a completely different way, and you're going to be way more inspiring to all of the people that are on that project team than you would be if you just feel like you're sort of another cog in the wheel.
Beautiful. That's a really good thing. I like that, kind of like taking that ownership right there. And then they got to ask themselves that next question of, how am I leading? What am I putting people in the right place? How am I setting these systems up? So it all leads, but I think you're dead on right with that, understanding the vision, act like they own the project. It's their own kind of startup in a sense. I think it's going to be a different Tuesday after that.
Well,
Monday.
yeah. And it'll be, forget about all the other benefits.
Yeah.
It's going to be more fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be a lot more fun to be like, I'm on a mission for this, to complete this, to do this, right? Then be like, oh, like I gotta go, slog through this again today. Right. And life is too short to slog through anything. So either choose a new project or choose a better attitude. And, it's way easier to choose a better attitude than go find a new project or a new role or a new business. Because like you said, a little while ago, you're the common denominator.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if all your projects suck, like, I hate to tell you, but maybe you suck right now, and if you want to really, kind of set things up for success, and feel like you're on fire and have all the people who are working for you on fire. Like, choose an attitude of winning and ownership, and like, be like, you know what? I may not own this company, or I may own this company, or whatever. Because this whole apathy thing, this happens even with entrepreneurs who are running their own business too.
Right.
Like, anyone who tells you that every entrepreneur who, like, once they start their business is just like totally in love with everything they're doing every day is completely full of crap.
Right.
Right. Most of them are like, oh, like, how did I get stuck with this? Well, you chose it.
Yeah.
Right. But if you choose a better way of being and a better attitude and step up into that, like, here's what we're going to accomplish, and I'm going to practice what I preach, and I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and I'm going to try and find solutions that are like massive wins for everybody, and I listen and take other people's perspectives into account. Like, maybe you're right. Maybe this is a transformational conversation, but that is a game.
Right. It is, James. Like, yeah, it is. It is. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like, that is the way you frame that up. If someone goes to their job and thinks about it, doesn't matter if they're working on a pork sausage factory line, which is extremely exciting. It smells great.
Right,
but
sure it is.
Yeah. They can turn that into their whole game. I think that's great, man. Like,
yeah. Well, there's a story that comes to mind. So this, back in the, kind of the Renaissance, this guy's walking through Florence.
Okay.
And he comes upon this one guy, and this guy's like laying bricks for a project. They're building something.
Yeah.
And he asks the guy, he's like, "Oh, what are you working on right now?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm just laying bricks. I kind of put one on top of the other, and I, seal them off and do the things that I do." And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool." Guy keeps walking down the street, and he comes upon another bricklayer, and he says, "Oh, what are you doing?" And this guy stops what he's doing. He looks at the dude and he says, "I'm building a cathedral."
Nice.
Right? The actions that they're doing, exactly the same, right? They're both laying bricks. One guy just sees it as putting one brick on top of the other. The other guy sees himself as building a cathedral. And my challenge to you is build a cathedral. Like, it's a hell of a lot more motivating to build a cathedral than just put bricks on top of each other.
Beautiful. That's exactly right. James, I think that's a good way to end this one. I want to do it again later if we can. I'm sure everybody learned a ton. James, if people like hear this and they go, "Yo, I'm on board. James has got something to teach me," how can they find you? I know you got a podcast called Just the Tips.
I do.
I like the name and I like the podcast. So how would they get more of like learning from you, or get more products, or how can they, what would they do next?
Yeah. So you could go to jamespfriel.com, Friel. And that's kind of a home base for all of our stuff. I would say for, some of the people who might potentially be listening here, there's a program called Managing Like a Boss,
right?
Which could be really helpful for you. And if you want to check that out, you go to jamespfriel.com/managing. And I think maybe we'll put this in the show notes or whatever, but I think we're doing like a special thing for listeners of your show.
No doubt, bro.
And so probably better to use that URL and forget what I just said.
Right.
But either way, those are great places to get more information and some more content.
That's good. And we'll put it down in the show notes, and we'll do the link. And Managing Like a Boss, I've been in, I've learned a lot. And I think it is a good, because just to sum up everything that you said, basically that perfect statement of like managing like a boss is like them owning their life, their project, and like their career, and like really helping everything out. So I'm on board 100%, man. This has been really, really helpful. I'm excited to have this come out, and I'm excited to learn from you again soon. So thanks.